Hey, this is Professor Homo. Welcome to EX9. This is responsive design using the Dentist site. And I'm going to skip over downloading this from CyberDuck, assuming you've done that a couple times. So I'll have a folder in there all ready to go from CyberDuck. So once you download it, and here's kind of an example here. Here's my folder, upload sample, and there's the EX9 that I just downloaded from CyberDuck. And keep in mind there's a couple files in here. There's images for your HTML page. There's a CSS file which you're going to work on, and that's how you're going to make it responsive. There's also a media queries example file here. Now you're not going to be linking to this or anything. It's just so that you have some samples to look at so that you don't have to get them off the web. And you could also copy and paste from here. So you could use that, but you're not going to link to that. So just be aware of that. And here's your index page. So what I'm going to do is go to brackets first, and like you've been doing in the past, I'm going to go and open up a folder and kind of define that folder as the one that I'm working in. So it just shows the files in that folder. So I'm going to choose EX9, and I'm going to open up that folder. And again, you should see the EX9 CSS file. You should see the index file, which is the HTML. And then there's also media query sample, which we'll just need for just one quick thing, and then you won't need it anymore. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I have the index file opened up. And what I'm going to do here, if you look at it at the top in the head tag, there's two areas with HTML comments that are asking for you to put something in there. And I'll have you go get them and put them in there so you get used to finding it. The first is an HTML Shim. It's also called Shiv, which is basically for older versions of Internet Explorer to recognize HTML5. And if you just search HTML Shim, it's pretty easy to find. So I'm just going to go, I already have a search here, HTML Shim. One of these here, I don't know, you could grab just about any one. They'll all pretty much look the same. And what you want to look for is this thing that says, like, it'll be like a little script. And it should look like this. It's inside of HTML comments, and it says if later than IE 9. So you should see something like this. So when you see this, you should be able to just copy it. Just wherever it is, just copy that code. And it should say HTML5 Shiv inside it, and it may be from Google, it may be from other places, but you could just copy it and then go back to your HTML in brackets and basically just paste it underneath where I have that comment. So that's all you need. That's all you need for that. You're not really going to see anything unless you look at it on older versions of Internet Explorer, which you may not, but you should put that in there. It's recommended. And then there's also this meta viewport tag. And what you could do is just search for meta viewport, and I'll put some links up as well. And here I already did a search for meta viewport. You could go to this one that says don't forget the viewport meta tag. That's actually a pretty good link because it explains a lot about it, and it even shows kind of the history of it, of what it is. And it kind of looks like this, and it explains why it is. It's basically so it scales things properly on an iPhone or on phones is what it really does. So I'm going to scroll down and look for the code. They even show a couple like this, and the one we want to use, the putting it all together one, you can use either one. You could use the one that says viewport and then it says content equals initial scale equals 1. You could use one like this, or sometimes they also have this width equals device width inside it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to use the one that has both right here. I'm just going to copy this particular code right here, and I'll put it in. And again, that'll go in my HTML. So I'll put this right under here. Now this one will be a meta tag. It will not be a comment like the script is, because that script's only going to get read if it needs it. Otherwise, it'll just ignore it and it'll use your new HTML5. So that's what we need here. So that's all we really need in our index page. So I've done everything else for you here. We may have to make some small changes for non-breaking spaces, but I also, like I mentioned in the first video, I put the fig caption or the figure element basically after sections, so that when we go responsive, it'll be the last thing that shows up, and your picture could be last on the page when it's in a single column. So I already did that for you. Like I said, the only thing we may have to put in is non-breaking spaces if some of the lines break in weird places, but we shouldn't have to do anything right now. And I'm going to take a look at my CSS now. And there's one thing you have to do in the CSS, obviously before all the other stuff at the end, but in the beginning there's one thing you're supposed to do here, and I'll just type this in. You're supposed to put a display block setting for all of your HTML5 elements. So Hopefully you remember what some of your elements are. I could see them here, but HTML5 elements are things like, I'll put them in alphabetical order if I remember. I know article, and then a comma. Header is one of them. Section is one of them. Nav is one of them. Figure is one of them. We use figure. You could use, I'll skip fig caption for now. Footer is one of them. Aside is one of them. So that's pretty much it for now. Those are kind of the main ones. It's just so that if they don't recognize HTML5, they won't know what those elements are. And basically what you do is you make a rule. So I'll make a rule here, and you just put display, and I'll choose display, and I'll just use block. That's all you need. That's all you need for that. And again, you're not really going to see a big difference if you don't put it in. If you're viewing it on modern browsers, you're not going to notice, but it's a good thing for backwards compatibility. So I'm going to make sure I put that in, and if you ever find out there's something that's not showing up, you can just throw it in here in this list with comments. But it's display block, because otherwise if it doesn't recognize that particular element, it'll treat it as inline, even if it doesn't know what it is. So that's the first part. So it's just those three things. Let's review them again. It's your HTML shim or shiv, it's called both. Your meta viewport, it's your meta tag that's right here, and that's for phones so that it scales 100%, so that people don't have to, pinch it to make it scale right away like you've seen on some sites that you've been to if you've checked them out on your phone. And then also on the CSS, we put these HTML5 elements and we make sure they display as block. Now we could display them as block in our actual rules, but this way it kind of hits them all at once, right at the beginning, right after we do our margin padding reset. Okay, so this is the CSS for everything we've done so far. What we're going to do, and let me just preview this, and here it is, and you can see right now it's pretty much the way we set it up. It scales. I mean, it doesn't scale, but if you scale the window, it centers, and then basically it starts to get cropped once it can't go over anymore. So once it gets to 960, it won't go over anymore. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to go to about 680, which is about right here. And you could use Firefox and kind of measure that, but this is about 680 right here. And then we're going to make a media query happen and make the layout change using CSS. And I'll show you how to do a media query first. Okay, so I'm even going to leave my window like this in Chrome. My Chrome window doesn't go any smaller, so we'll kind of use this to kind of estimate and I'll even move my brackets over so I could kind of, that way I could kind of make previews here and kind of look at look at what happens here. So I could kind of see things as they happen here. But the first thing you're going to do in your code is you're going to put in a media query. And if you don't have an idea about a media query, hopefully you read some of the articles, but you could go here. There's media query samples, and there's a whole bunch here. It says for iPhone portrait, iPhone landscape. We're only going to really hit iPhone portrait right now. That's all we're concerned about. And we only need the query. This is just an example of a rule that's inside, that you could use that'll just change the font and the background color of a page. It's just for a sample that they use. But really the main part of this is this. And it's going to need the closing bracket, but I'll just put that in myself. But we're going to use this media screen and max width. So I'm just going to copy this from media query samples and go back to my CSS, and I'll put it down here. And notice I put this big divider with a comment, with a CSS comment. Remember the difference between CSS comments and HTML. This has the /*, while the other one has the bracket, exclamation point, dash dash, and finishes off with a dash dash arrow again. These things, HTML comments, be familiar with them. And you could add extra ones in there. Make sure you get the first two and the last two, and then add extra ones in there if you want to make it look like more of a divider. So anyway, back to this. I need a finishing bracket. I'm going to put the bracket right down here. So everything gets embedded inside these brackets, additional brackets. So I'm going to spread these out a little bit because we're going to put a bunch of stuff in here. And this is how it's going to start. Now I just so I don't lose track of my closing brackets, because I'm going to have 2 brackets for every rule, but this opens it up, and it's basically going to use this query when the max width gets to 320. And you're saying, well, 320, I thought you said 680. Right, 680. So we're going to change this to 680. We could make it once it gets down to 320, but we're going to do it sooner because we don't want anything cut off. So we're going to do it sooner. And you could do media queries that are for in between. There's all kinds of things you can do, but we're only going to just kind of retrofit our site to fit on a phone. That's our plan here. Retrofitting our site to fit on a phone. And it's not easy because we already set it up almost for fixed width layout. We didn't set it up to be responsive, so it's going to be a little more work. And after you do this, then maybe you might, we'll try to design sites that are a little more responsive right from the beginning, knowing that.